Now,
Very
once you're ready,
nice.
once you found your home, so we found our client, we're ready to go. We sent them a list of homes. They're ready to go look at some homes. So before you go look at homes, you need to do some prep work before. This is very important section. If you don't do this, you don't know what to do. Okay. One of the big things is of course, you have to get your buyer pre-approved. I hate to say, of course, because I talk to a lot of agents that they call it, I used to do when I was new, I call it my shit day, excuse my language, where I knew it was going to be a crappy day. And I just took my clients out unpre-approved just to get them hooked and just to meet them instead of doing a buyer interview, because nobody ever told me, and I'll talk about buyer interviews in a minute. No one ever told me how important that was to meet the client somewhere like an office or somewhere else and sit down with them. If they're not willing to meet with you for an hour at an office before you go show home so you can get to know them a little bit, then they're not a very serious client. And
They're not ready.
They're not ready, exactly.
Yeah.
They don't understand that you are the professional, you're in charge. Their job is to listen to you as the agent. And again, I don't look at it as being an agent, I look at it as running my business. So if I'm my business owner and they're not listening to me as a business owner, no matter what type of business, I don't have any issue, I'm done. I don't need to deal with them. Okay, so this is what you do. You talk to them, you talk to your client. I always do a group text and I let them know. So what the group text looks like, let me get rid of that tab right here. So this was my lender. My first one, I would say, like, say Dan is my client. I would say, Dan, it was a pleasure talking to you. This would be my text. I'd like to introduce you to my associate, Manny, who's who I use now with Next to Mortgage. They can get you pre-approved and check on your buying power. That's one text, boom, intro text. The second one says, we're going to use this text to get a little background. So then I would say, hey, Manny, comma, Dan is a self-employed. He runs a hedge fund, He's in School of Sharks. He's a 1099, and then he would know that, okay, this might be a loan. That's a bank statement loan. I give something, or I would say Dan is a VA veteran. He's excellent. He has 100% disability rating. He's looking forward to buying a home. And then my lender would know that they have no taxes because they're 100% disabled. Try to give a little bit of something about the client, so it makes
that boosts the purchasing power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that would man, that's the best. I love
that's a huge one, bro. That's the whole 3 hours right there.
Right there. Yeah. So
find out if he's fully disabled.
I know if you're that's like 90% of my clients are disabled vets just for that reason. My purchasing power triples if they're 100%. So
especially in San Antonio, with property taxes, you have to account for so much.
It's so crazy. So yeah, you can save so much, even if you're only any disability rating. Now it has to be a service-connected disability. So you always ask your veterans, do you have a service-connected disability rating? And as long as they have something 60, well, any percent is good, but 60% or higher, then they take some of their taxes off. And you can base the pre-approval on the tax discount. So instead of being approved at 250, you could start at 290 for the same price. So it's a huge buying power difference. So always ask that question. So that's why you give the lender a little heads up so they know. And then I say the first step is to get the application done online. Here's the link to apply. And then I send them my lender's link, which is this is actually the link. And that's it. Those 3 little texts in the last one. And then my lender, we have it worked out. He replies back, thanks, Andrew. Nice to meet you, Dan. I'm going to get back to you within 24 hours of you finishing the application. When do you think you're going to have it done? And he finishes with a question. So Dan is put on the spot. He has to say, oh, I just said that to get Andrew off my back. He's a dick. I don't want to talk to him. Or he could be like, hey, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. And then if Dan is like, I'll have it done tonight. Most people give you, I'll have it done by end of day tomorrow. And then we know if we miss it, we give them an extra day and then we follow up. Okay, the money's in the follow-up. Because then at that point.
And this is done in a group text. So everyone stays in the loop.
Text between me, the lender, and the client. So there's 3 people together. Now, if it's a husband and wife, I get the number of
include
both,
them.
and I include all 4 of them in the group text. So then everyone's on the same page. No one is questions. And then if anything happens and the client gets angry for some reason and tries to say, you were wrong, you didn't do this, you have it in writing. You have proof of what you did. So it protects you as an agent as well. Because once you start doing a lot of deals, you're going to deal with Trek and you're going to deal with people getting angry at you. So you have to learn the little tricks to protect yourself. Because it makes a big difference. Yeah. I protected myself a couple times by having this set. So you have to. Okay. So that's what this does. Now, once we do that, you want to check for your pre-approval and pre-qualification. So say Dan's my client and he fills out the application, ding, 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 it looks good. Boom, he sends it in. And then Manny, my lender, would call me and say, Dan looks great. He's ready to buy. I think he's going to be good for 350. He's what's called pre-qualified, where he looks good. Everything is there. Everything looks okay. And we know we connected the dots, dotted the I's, crossed the T's, all that jazz. And then what they're going to do is going to say, within
now at
5
this
days,
point, I share the difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval, because I've seen a lot of people use those two interchangeably, and there's a world of a difference between the two.
So the pre-qual is it looks good, but we haven't seen your documents yet. So we say in real estate, buyers are liars, sellers are tellers. So buyers will always say everything they can to make themselves look good. And then we don't know. You know, I had one client, he was married and divorced twice, still married to a third wife, and he bought her house and he didn't tell anybody this. And we didn't know until we started pulling docs. So he was pre-qualified and we started shopping. And then when we started digging deeper, he was not pre-approved. So once we got his documents, we had to back away, and he's not ready to buy a house right now. That's an actual client I have right now. We're dealing with that. So you have to always better to get pre-approved. Most lenders now will not let you show homes if they're not pre-approved. They only want pre-approved, and you should, as an agent, only want pre-approved buyers. I always say the starving agents will take a client, you look good, let's go, woohoo, and you'll go run around because you want to make a closing because you're starving, and I understand that. But you're going to be wasting your time where you could be on the phones or go, doing an open house, talking to builders, doing videos, whatever you need to do for your lead gen. You could be getting a more qualified buyer. So just keep that in mind.
That's 10 times more productive.
At least
than being a chauffeur for someone.
Yep. Now, if you go and they pull credit and see where it is, and they come and say they need to be a 580, we can, usually most lenders want a 580, and say they're a 550, they're going to need 3 to 6 months of credit repair. At that point, you don't just say, oh, sorry, Andrew, sorry, Dan, sorry, you can't buy a house. Good luck. I'll talk to you in 3 months. What you do is you take them to a new construction, a new builder, and you put them in a home at the price point that they're going to be at when they finish credit repair, and you lock them into a contract. And then that way you get what's called a conditional pre-approval, and you have it ready based on condition of them finishing credit repair. And it's a huge that way. So you can just knock it out. You're good. They're done with credit repair. They move right into their house. And then
you give them something tangible to look towards, to touch and feel.
In sales, we call it an emotional attachment. It creates an attachment to them emotionally, that they're going to finish the build. They're going to finish their credit repair because they're home every weekend. They drive by it. It works really good. Otherwise we get 50-50 for people who finish credit repair, because they're just like, I'm going to go rent. I'm okay. So this way they have something tangible that they can look at. So it's very important that way. Okay. Now, once you're done that and they're pre-approved and you're good, you're going to look at the buyer interview form. So what that form is, real quick, is you're going to ask them a really important question. The first question you ask, are you working with a real estate agent yet? And it sounds silly, but the buyers usually don't realize they can only work with one agent at a time. And it's against our code of ethics, at least in Texas, that we are not allowed to go behind other agents' backs and take their clients. Okay, so that's why you sign a buyer tenant rep. We'll talk about that later. And then you're going to work with that agent.
Can you take them in front of them? I mean, not behind their back, but in front. No, I'm kidding. That was a bad question.
I've had other agents.
That's very good.
Some people say, I don't like my agent. And then you just need to say, tell your agent you need a cancellation of services. There's a form where they can cancel. They can, terminate their representation. It's a buyer rep termination agreement. And you just terminate it, and then they're free to go and they can't come after you. And if they refuse to do that, then you just put it in writing. I no longer want you as my agent. Please stop contacting me. I have a new agent. And they can throw all the tantrums they want, but they're done. Okay. So you ask that. You ask what kind of property they're looking for, obviously. What's your monthly budget? So you don't ask them, how much do you want to spend on a home? You ask them, what do you want to pay per month for your mortgage?
Why is that question important?
Because if you ask them how much you want to buy, they're saying, I want to pay $400,000. I've seen some online. They're beautiful. And then you're going to say, what's your monthly payment? Well, $2,000 a month. And right now that's about $250,000, $245,000. So that's a huge difference. So you have to ask that question that's why when you go to a car dealership, they don't tell you how much do you want to spend on your car. They always say, what's your monthly payment you want to be at? We'll get you to that point. So your goal is to find a home based on their monthly payment. So it's really, you got to really make sure. And this question kind of bases on the other one. What are the top 3 features you're looking for in a property? It could be the number of baths, it could be location, it could be acreage. So if they want, say, 2,000 a month and they want to have 5 acres, that is not going to happen. I mean, you might get lucky down in Petite or somewhere, but if they want to be around the city and they want to be in a good area, at that point, then you have to have, I call it, you're coming to Jesus talk. I say, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. It's just, you have, I don't want to say, I say to my lender, I say, they have a coffee budget, but they have champagne taste. And that's, if we have that, there's nothing we can do about that. We have to have that.
Champagne taste with a beer budget.
Yeah, exactly. And then you always say, what are your 2 top preferred locations or neighborhoods? Because they might say, I don't care where it is, and then ask, if you could pick, where would you go? And then if they have a, 250,000, they want to live in Bernie, of course, that's not going to happen. But there's things like that. And then are you looking for a property that you need to do any repairs? Are you looking for a property that's move-in ready? That's a huge question, because they might want a $400,000 home, but they could buy one for $250 that needs $200,000 in repairs. And that could be something that they were willing to do. So you ask that question. What's your timeline? So you know if they have a couple months or what's going on. You ask, are you been pre-approved, to make sure that they do? You know that already, but you still ask it to make sure they understand what that means. And then you say, what is your experience with buying real estate? I like to say, based on that, instead of saying that, I would say, what do you know about the current real estate market? So they can tell me what they think is going on. And usually they'll say something like, well, I'm going to be able to offer 100,000 less. And you're like, no, that was 10 years ago. That's not where we are today. That was 2008. And then you have to just nicely say, that's interesting. A couple of years ago, that's how it was. This is how the market is now. And then you could have your market report data right there to walk them through. And you make sure they understand that. And then you ask, what are your concerns? Because remember, in real estate, we call them their pain points or their concerns. So you say, what are your concerns? What's your pain points? I would just ask them, what's your concern? And everyone has a different worry. Some people are worried about a backyard. Some worried about the price. Some just want a pool. Some could care less about anything else. So always ask, what's your biggest issue? And then what compromises are you willing to make on these top 3 things we asked about to make your budget fit? If they're not willing to make any compromises and they need a $400,000 house and they only have a $250,000 budget, I'm probably going to say, I don't think I'm the right agent for you. Thank you for coming in and talking to me. When you're ready to talk, I'm willing to listen, and when we can look at homes that you can afford, because I'm wasting my time. So you have to know when to walk away. And you're gonna be like, Andrew, that's crazy. You just walked away from 400,000. No, I didn't. They're not.
No, I didn't. Yeah, that was not a buyer.
Exactly. That is not a buyer. They are, but they're in their own little world. And I don't have time to deal with those people. So I call them my Karen and Ken buyers. Those are your Karen and Ken buyers. You don't want to deal with those. Yeah, you want to
It's
just
like
let
that funny reel TikTok I saw the other day that, no, Karen, that home sold already.
Yeah.
When? 1984.
Yeah, we have one in your budget, but it's sold. When? 1984. Yeah, okay. So you can have that. If you want to deal with that, that's fine. If you're a new agent, you're like, I can take it. I'm like, nope, it's all good. And then ask them, what are you using the property for? Is it a primary residence? Are they using it for an Airbnb? Is it an investment property? Because if it's going to change, if it's an investment property and they have a home already, this is a 20% down now. This is no longer just a basic 3.5% or VA, no money down. It's going to change a whole everything. So you need to have those questions. So if you go through, this gives you a good base. You can add into the other ones that you want. Some people like to ask like a sheet, like what's your birthday, all that, your anniversary, they can keep in track. That's a good idea too. I just kept it for the buyer to keep it not as easy as understandable. So this is a very good way to start, to walk through and to understand what's happening and to get that way started. Okay.
From your experience, and I'm sure there's pros and cons, but would you say it leads to better results to do this in a formal setting, like a conference room or your office, or to do it in a little bit more laid back setting, like maybe a coffee shop? What are your thoughts? Not a bar. You don't want to do it at a bar, but
you don't
a
want to
coffee
do it in
shop.
the bar. You really want to try to do it in person if they can. Some people say, can we do it on Zoom? I know in today's world you can, but it's not as personable. You don't connect as well. It's harder to read body language. I like to do it at my title company because of our office. We have some offices. I work out of my home. I have a home office and I'm not bringing my clients here. So I go to the title company. They have extra offices there. They let me use. We have a couple insurance companies in the area. They have extra offices. I meet them at a neutral setting close to where they live. And I drive out there, we sit down for an hour or so. And then if everything's
nice.
good, I meet them early enough so we can meet. And then if they're happy, right, then they're excited. And then right there, I have my computer, I pull it open and I literally start going through homes with them right in front of me, saying, this is a home, this is a home. And then if they have time, I make sure I have a block of time after that. We making appointments right there and go look at homes because they're excited, they're hot. I always say, if you don't strike
So you're okay showing 1 or 2 homes before getting pre-qualified.
I don't even talk to them until they're pre-qualified.
So help me understand. So the
Yeah,
audience can
so-
understand the
so if you look
buyer
here on the
questions.
sheet we're
Is
going-
that before or after the pre-qualification?
So you're gonna get your lead, you're gonna send it to the lender. Once the lender says,
Got
yeah,
it.
they're pre-qualified, then you do your buyer tenant rep.
Got it.
Yeah, that's why we have the slides like that, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
nice. Okay.
And then at that point, you want to have 2 forms, your IABS, your information about broker services. This just says, I'm a realtor. I always make a joke and say, and they're not supposed to initial it. If they refuse, it's okay. Some people are silly. And then you have what's called your buyer tenant rep form by representation. What that one is, I think I have one up real quick. Here it is, my buyer tenant rep. This is very simple form. It just shows that I represent you as an agent and I'm allowed to get paid because I represent you as an agent. If you don't have this form, a builder does not have to pay you by Texas law. They usually will, but if you don't have it, you don't get paid for new build. I had 2 new builds that walked away from me because I wasn't doing my job as a new agent because no one told me. I didn't know, and they didn't pay me. So I learned hard. I lost like $40,000 in a month. It was a bad month, but it's okay. You live and learn. You move on. Yep. So what you do when you do the form, your client's info will be here. And then under here, the big thing I want to show you, it says San Antonio or whatever area and surrounding MLS areas. So if you're driving your clients around for 2 days looking at homes and they find a for sale by owner and they go there and buy the home without you, and they're like, I don't need you anymore. This form says because you put surrounding the MLS areas, you can still go after them for your commission because you spent your time. You're still supposed to represent them. They agree to let you represent them no matter what home they buy. So that's
Very
important
nice.
to make sure you have it in there. And
Is
then
there
I
a
always
legal
do my-
definition of what surrounding is?
There's not. It's very, I mean, if they fight you, most brokers aren't going to go after it. I've only had one broker where someone went behind their back and bought $1 million home. And then they invited the agent to the open house party. So when they went to the home, they said, oh, is that right? And then they went to the broker and the broker said, oh yeah, we're going after our $35,000 commission. And they got it because they had a buyer tenant rep. Yep. And they had to pay, the buyer had to pay all legal fees as well when they took them to court. So it was good times. So they lost about $50,000 by trying to sneak
Altogether.
behind their agent. But yeah, and then this would, you just click on the drop down when you're in zip forms and this would be there. Again, it's already filled in for the area, San Antonio areas. You always want to do intermediary status. So this means that they can, if I have a listing, I'm allowed to take that buyer to my listing. And then if they want to buy it, I find someone else to represent the buyer because I'm already representing the seller. Because you can't represent both. Okay, that's very dangerous. Don't ever try that. Even if you think you can, you're going to get yourself.
What's the name for that? A dual representation, I
dual
think?
agency?
Yeah, dual agency.
Yeah, dual agency or dual representation. Most people call it dual agency. So you can take a client to your own broker. Like if you're the broker you're listing, I can take them there. It's okay. But if they want to buy it, I find someone from my team. They now become my team's client. I represent the seller. They represent the buyer, and I cut ways. And then my broker's like, okay, you're good with it. Then the broker has to agree that you both are from the same broker and it's okay, which they don't have any issue. And most people have no issue, but that's what this says if you need to explain it. Okay, and the broker fee is the big one right here. So the commission, remember, agents always think that the seller pays your commission, which they usually do out of the sellers. When you have that on the MLS, you get paid. But if the seller's like, I'm only paying you 1%, then you have to go after your client if you want to pick the other 1.5%. This says that in Texas, the law says the buyer pays the buyer agent's commission, even though the seller is the one who does it usually 99.9% of the time. So if you're being paid a 1.5 or 2% commission, you can go after your client and try to get the rest. I've never known anyone who does, except for that one time with $1 million home, but you can.
Might be worth it at $1 million.
Yeah, for $1 million, I do it. I'd go find some, I'd have
And
it.
he's got money.
Yeah, they have money because they bought $1 million home and they got their commission, yep. So there you go, so that's where that section is. And then the rest pretty much is pretty basic, and then here, if you're gonna do any construction, if you're gonna use new construction and stuff, they have their own forms, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. Protection period, this, I mean, what this means is that if any 90 days after I showed my buyer home, that they go behind my back when they say, we don't want to work with you anymore, Andrew, and they try to terminate the agreement, I have 90 days. If they buy one of the homes I showed them, I can go after my commission. But I would have
Only
to have
if they bought a home that you introduced them
only
to.
if they bought a home I showed them. And I have to
Got
make
it.
a list. If you read all this, it talks about you have to make a list of all the homes you showed and have proof that you showed them. So, I mean, the protection period's there, but I've never, ever heard anyone be able to use it effectively. It's there. It's honestly, this is just my opinion. Don't take it. I think it's there just to make
It's a
agents feel
scare
better.
clause.
It's a there clause. Yeah, it does nothing. And then I always put IABS because you gave them that form at the same time. And then at the bottom, and you and the client sign it. So on the buy side, you don't sign very many forms. This is one of the only forms you're going to sign on the buy side, other than like a lead-based paint form or something.
Got
So
it.
this is pretty
Very
much it. So you're
nice.
making a legal agreement to work with your buyer. So it's very important to have that. And
I
that
heard an
protection-
agent one time, when he was going to make that, present
Yeah.
that. He said, so I just want to ask you, after everything you heard, did you want to hire me?
Mhm.
The psychology behind that verbiage is like, oh yeah, I want to hire you. Okay. All right, well, here you go, hire me.
That's what I say. I say, this is an agreement, just like anything else. This allows me to get paid. And I've
Very
never had a
nice.
buyer say, no, I refuse to buy it, pay time, I'm like, whatever, if you present it right, and some people like to make a big deal, but it's simple, just present it. And if they say no and they refuse to sign it, then they're probably gonna have issues with that client over the long run. And then I would
Probably.
maybe double check before. I had a client that they were pre-approved and they sent to me from the lender. And the first thing the client said was, I work with multiple realtors. I don't sign anything. Whoever brings me the best deal is the client, the person I'm gonna work with.
Oh, it ain't gonna be me.
Yeah, and I just said, thank you for your time. And he's like, wait, what? Your lender said you're the best. I said, I am. But I don't, you have to follow me. I don't follow you. And he was like,
Great, great.
yep. And he was like, no. And I was like, have a great day. Good luck.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's not
Yes,
worth
yes.
it.